Hello, and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines, and this is the Sky High and Fly Jump Lab podcast. We're in the middle of getting ready for the Olympics. We've been doing a couple podcasts with some young Olympic hopefuls who were going to the trials. We recently did a podcast with Dontavius Hill. We had a couple kids from Grand Valley State. I actually have a Division II school here in Michigan with count them, three different jumpers that qualified for the trials and competed there. So I just was going through the list of competitors the other day after seeing the results. And I noticed a name of a young man who was an NAIA level jumper, Shandon Reitzell, who had jumped 7.2 in his past, but made it into the field. So I'm not really sure what it is that he did to qualify. Didn't certainly suspected that Shannon had the talent to jump high enough to get in, and I think it's right around 2.72, like 220. I think 7.2 and a half. So somewhere along the line, he must have jumped 7.2 and a half because I saw his name as a competitor there at the trial. So having had Shannon on the show before, we decided to get him back in and talk to him about his experience there at the trials. If you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time over the last 3 or 4 years, one of my dreams was to make it, to Olympic trials. At UCLA, I was a 7.3 and a half jumper, which was 222. In '84, when I was a sophomore, when the games were here in LA, the trial height was 7.4 and a half, I believe. So which was 225. And I had just jumped that year 218 for the first time to get to 220. And yeah, 218, which is 7.2. So I was 7 centimeters short of that, but I wasn't even in my dream set at that point. I hadn't even jumped 7 feet that year. So before that season started. So having gotten up to 7.2 at the end, there were a couple people that told me, hey, the trial height's only 225. You're kind of knocking on the door there. So it's like, oh yeah. So I went to a couple meets, after the season at UCLA was over. Tried to get in. First time I got to see Leo Williams jump was down at a meet in San Diego. And my future good friend and teammate, Brian Mergenthal, was down there and saw Brian jump for the first time. And he had not yet come to UCLA. So that was kind of the end of '84. And, in '88, I was still on the team in '86. I graduated off the track team in 1986 with my best year. And then, had 2 years till the trial. So in '88, I was technically a professional. Nobody was paying me to do anything. And, struggling to survive as an athlete on your own in a sport that doesn't really make a lot of money is track and field. So, you're working odd jobs. I wasn't using my degree at all. I was coaching and I was working as a waiter, I think. And there was a lot of odd little jobs here and there and, training and trying to survive and no easy roadmap there. We're going to do a couple podcasts about that with, I've already talked about it at some length with former athletes like Lauren Magnuson and current athletes like, Dontavius, who are now, out from under the umbrella of their school and still training and competing, which is a completely different universe. So we're really excited to talk with Shannon here when we get him in just a few minutes. So I'd like to the talk about how the Olympic trials did go here in the U.S., which was I think it was a little bit mildly disappointing to some. I talked to Doug Nordquist, the great American jumper, one of our first podcast guests, and Doug jumped 236, which is like 7.8 3/4 or something. It was way up there, and he went to the trials in '84 and jumped 7.6 or 7.7 and made the team with his cousin Dwight, distant cousin. and also Leo Williams, who was a backup, and Milton Good. And he was on that team in '84 and got to compete and came in fifth, I think. Stones got fourth at 7.7. Doug got fifth at 7.6. And then the current world record holder at that time, Jin Chua from China, Xu Chenhua, he jumped, came in third, jumped 7.8 or something like that, 7.8 3/4. And then it was Mogenberg taking the silver, and or no, Mogenberg won it, and Sjöberg from Sweden took second. That was 1984. So I was talking with Doug, and he went up and saw the trials and said that it was, it was okay. Qualifying wasn't fabulous. There's a lot of people who didn't perform well at in the qualifying round. So for guys that have jumped 7.5 and 7.4 to get in there, the opening height was 214, and which is 7 feet 1/4 inch, something like that. And then 219, which is 7.2 1/4. And many didn't make 2 1/4. So to get into the final, didn't take a lot to get into the final. And then in the finals, one of the top jumpers, Javon Harrison and Shelby McEwen, who were the top two U.S. guys, and both had Olympic qualifiers. Shelby actually won, didn't jump super high, but he's already got an Olympic qualifier, so he's fine. And then the next two guys, I don't think have Olympic qualifiers, and they didn't jump an Olympic qualifier. They just finished second and third. And then I believe Javon Harrison came in fourth, and but he has an Olympic qualifier. So I think the only two that we can send are those two. It wasn't a fabulous output by the high jumpers, and the state of the high jump here in the U.S. is kind of interesting. I talked with Jeremy Fisher some length a couple weekends ago at the last Chula Vista meet of the season. We were kind of bemoaning the fact that there's a lot of talent here in the U.S. Obviously, we're a huge country, and 300 million people and whatever, and tons of athletes that are doing all kinds of sports. And I think there may be just a little watering down that has happened over time here in the U.S. with more athletes going to play basketball and volleyball, and I think generally kind of gravitating towards sports where they can make some real money. And so, if and yes, you can make money in track and field, but you have to be really, really good. You have to be at the top of your profession, literally, like in the top 1, 2, or 3. And when the lights are on, and it's an Olympic spotlight, you may be able to make some money from that. Like you can land some endorsements, maybe get a commercial, something like that. But it's so rare. I remember Usain Bolt getting his commercial after he won multiple golds, for 3 or 4 Olympics in a row, and he did the pose, and that was they worked it into the commercial. Okay, great, but it's not ongoing, and it's difficult for those guys to stay in the spotlight because the spotlights aren't very big, unless it's a huge meet. Even the worlds, from year to year, track and field is just hard to find, and I'm a track lover. I love watching the high jump and other track events, and I'm not so big on watching people run around in circles for a long time, but I get it. And then there's people that are doing that at unbelievable levels. So but nobody watches it on TV. We're suffering a big image problem. So here we are with the spotlights on. Once every 4 years, people do get excited about track and field, even if they don't understand it or know it that well, because it's Olympic sport and it's all over the TV. So we get our chance to promote and see athletes take off. Javon Harrison back in 2021 jumped really high, and problem with that was one of the highest meets ever in Olympic history as far as not the winning height, but I think the depth of the field. There were a lot of guys jumping 7.8 3/4, 7.9 that year. I think Javon Harrison jumped 7.8 3/4, came in like ninth or something. Still working my way through that final on YouTube, which is great. If you really want to catch your high jumpers, look it up on YouTube. YouTube has always got the best one. The actual feed that they give us here in the U.S. is usually terrible for all the field events. they go very spottily through it. And part of it is the fact that it's going on, you know, while there's other stuff going on around. Usually the 2021 games were a little bit different in that they were in Japan and it was a pandemic. And then on that particular night, I noticed there was a couple times there would be a race coming through. You could barely tell the way that they covered it because they literally went through the whole competition from beginning to end. You got to see everybody, opening height, every competitor, you know, every jump, and which is great. You very rarely get to see that because they're kind of spotting you throughout, you know, thing while other things are going on. The ones that they quote unquote really want to watch, the 100 and the 200 and the relays and you know whatever. Those are shorter, faster, you know, faster. What do you call it? ADD, attention span, ADHD. You know, 5 second things where you can watch it from beginning to end. You're like, you know what happened. So the high jump takes that particular broadcast took a couple hours, you know, to go through all these guys jumping at such a high level, which for us is fascinating. For other people, probably not so much. So, but anyway, that's the way to watch that. And but getting back to the state of the American, you know, high jump is that, yeah, we have some unbelievably talented athletes, but I think you know what is driving high level coaching, you know, is just I don't know, it's not money. You know, it's really not money because there's no money to be had. There's no money. These athletes don't have the money to pay their coaches. The federation doesn't pay their coaches. The you know the United States USA Track and Field or this that you know yeah there's an Olympic Training Center and you know how do the kids get there? How do they stay there? How do they pay for their own things? You know we've had Jeremy Fisher on here a couple times and he's running the U.S. Olympic Training Center down there in Chula Vista and they don't fund it anymore. USA Track and Field pulled his funding and so he's trying to keep that going on donations and you know training athletes from other countries and you know he's been really working miracles to keep that place going and it's still producing you know still putting people in the trials in the games on podiums but it's difficult because it all takes money and without the exposure and without the marketing of their stars you know to the American public that money just doesn't exist. You know, we're looking at I watch football, you know, everybody knows their team, everybody knows their stars, everybody watches those guys. I mean, college football is huge here in the US and pro football is even bigger, you know. Basketball, you know, March Madness is huge over here. If you see a guy play well during March Madness, everybody goes, "Well, I wonder who's going to draft him." And then I can follow him as he turns into a pro, you know. And so it's very easy in some ways for these guys to market their stars. The NBA has always been fantastic at that. Everybody knows who the best players are. You know, everybody knows who LeBron James is. Everybody knows who Kobe Bryant is and was. Everybody knows Dr. J and Kareem and Magic. And, you know, these are names that are just off the charts. You start throwing around first names like that in track and field, you're like, who? Who's that? What country is that? You know, or what event do they do? I don't know. And, you know, yeah, I'm really focused in on the jumps and all that. I don't know who everybody is. I rarely see them, you know, unless I'm really digging. I mean, like an investigative reporter, you know, and I have a job and a life and a wife and other things that I'm doing also. So I don't know every single guy from each country. But here we are, you know, the Olympics are coming up and you get to see sometimes two guys, rarely three from the same, you know, place. But now that qualifying, that's fun. There's all kinds of guys there. So you get to see a lot of great jumpers from all over the world, you know, but it's rare, you know, once every 4 years. So, but we are coming up on that. And as we get Shandon Reitzell in here, we will talk about the current state of the United States high jumpers, the coaching and training and, you know, the future. Do have a lot of young talented kids. Like I said, Grand Valley State, which is a Division II school here in the U.S., has 3 guys that made it to the trials, which is pretty amazing, I think. And Shandon was at the NAIA level, which is, you know, these are smaller colleges, not the big D1 power schools. So there is talent out there. There are some outstanding coaches doing great jobs getting their athletes ready. And, you know, hopefully we'll see an improvement here as the U.S. pushes forward into this Olympics and the next 4 years getting ready for the Olympics in Los Angeles. So we'll take a small break and we'll be right back. We'll be talking with Shandon Reitzell when he gets here. All right, I got a text from Shannon, who's working his way into the green room, let's call it, for lack of a better term, so that we can talk to him about his exploits here at the U.S. Olympic Trials in 2024 up at Eugene, Oregon. Should be my first endorsement deal for the podcast. I I live on Zip Fizz. I love water like anybody else, and anything wet, especially when you live in a desert state like California. But I also have a sweet tooth, so I buy these little Zip Fizzes from Costco, and they got vitamins and minerals and stuff like that, and a shot of caffeine, and tastes sweet. I don't know if it's natural or what. I don't read things that far. I should. Brad Kearns, my favorite training guru that I listen to his podcast all the time. I'm sure he would outlaw them immediately from my diet, but I shamelessly have 2 or 3 of these every day. So I don't know if it's helping me, but keeps me happy because I like warm or cold, wet drinks with sugar taste. So continuing on our discussion with getting ready for Shannon, these young athletes are really amazing, and I've seen over the last 3 years now. This will be my 4th season coming up with working with the athletes at Vanguard University here in Southern California, which was an NAIA school. They are now making the jump up to Division II level. So all that really is a little bit more title. The sprinters and the distance guys have always been very solid there, and we recruit a few jumpers and throwers along the way, and so I'm there to help the jumpers and also the multi-event athletes who may or may not be good jumpers, but have some talent. So work with them in the high jump. This next year I'm going to be all high jump. I started off there all the jumps. Then I went to all the jumps in the vault and did that for 2 years. And now it's just going to be high jump. So, and only 1 day a week. But so, yeah, got some changes coming up on that front. But anyway, at the NAIA level, there are really, at the high end of the NAIA level, there are some really good athletes who, for whatever reason, decided to pick that level instead of, D1 or D2, D3. I don't know how many divisions there are. There's a lot of levels to these colleges here in the U.S. So, and like anything else, it's probably a little bit smaller pond, but there still are some big fish in those small ponds. And Shannon is one of those. I remember it's been 3 years or so now, because this my first year at the NAIA level at Vanguard was when I got to see Shannon, and I believe we did the podcast before I met him, and then I saw him at the NAIA National Finals. Very talented young man, perfect high jump body, tall, real, not like skeletally thin, but also not a big guy. Fast, light, flexible, all the things. For me, as a coach, I always tell the kids, I go, hey, if you've got this particular skill set, you're up there, in the upper echelon of people that I would want to recruit and turn into a high jumper. Someone who's 6 feet, up to 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and sometimes it sounds, prejudiced or like profiling or something, but and not that smaller guys can't jump high, because they can. Spud Webb, Franklin Jacobs here in the U.S. was 5'7" and a quarter or something and a half, and jumped 7'7" and a half, 2 feet over his own head. Stefan Holm from Sweden, who was 5'11" and a half, he jumped 7'11" and a half. So it's possible, but the tall ones are in more demand. I see Shannon's Shannon's starting to check in here. There he is. Shandon Reitzell. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I was just telling the listeners here we're on listening to the Raise the Bar podcast, and our guest is Shandon Reitzell, who is where are you still jumping, Shannon? What school?
Midland University, but actually not jumping anymore.
Yeah, got some breaking news. All right, well, um, so Shannon, I was just telling everybody that the first chance that I got to see you was 3 years ago, my first year at Vanguard University, and I believe you and I did the podcast because you came across my feed. I seen
Yeah.
you jumping 7 feet, 7'2". Was curious. Saw the talent that you had, obviously, perfect high jump type body and some outrageous clearances. Like I never see you squeaking over stuff. I usually see you just booming jumps where I'm just like, oh my gosh. And and then this year I did my due diligence looking through the Olympic trial results because I was curious to see what had happened. Don Tavius, I did a podcast with Don Tavius, and he was
Yeah.
looking for a big result there. Had jumped well in the previous weeks, and then he didn't have the meet that he wanted. I think he no heighted. He told me he was going to open at the lowest height and jump every height, but then when he got there, he decided to pass 214, came in at 219, no heighted. But I was just going along and I see Shandon Reitzel. I'm like, oh my God, Shannon made it to the trials. So
hmm
tell me about it, man. How was your last year? How did we get to where you got to, and how did the trials go?
Well, so this past season, indoor was a little shaky. I opened up in December with 215, which was a good start. It's the highest I've ever opened with. So that was good. And then after that, I kind of shut it down and I wanted to focus on long jump more, to try and get a lot better in that. And so I kind of shut down high jump, did long jump, ran some 4x4s, and then eventually I jumped again. Then I jumped 210, which was also a little shaky. I had an ankle injury the week before that, so not really the result I wanted there. And then after that, I think I only jumped two more times. I jumped at conference and I jumped at nationals.
Hmm.
So indoor was just kind of man. I mean, I'm not big on indoor anyway, so
Right.
it just didn't mean all that much to me. But then outdoor was rough too. Like it started off fairly cold. Like I mean, in the Midwest, it's rough always in the beginning of outdoor season. So um, I think our first meet was at Fort Hayes, and I mean it was windy. I mean below 40 degrees.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was wild. So I jumped there. I think I jumped like 206, and then after I cleared 206, I just quit. Just I just wanted to get the mark, go stay warm.
Right.
So I mean from there that was pretty much a stepping stone. I think the next meet I jumped 212, and then after that I got some shim issues. And I mean I never really went to the doctor for it or anything, but I'm like 99% sure it was a stress fracture.
Yeah.
And it was in my jump leg too. So I had to deal with that. So I took a couple more meets off. Um, and then that led us to conference, which was also cold and rainy. Shocker. So up in 12.5 there. And then after that, it was just pretty much prep for nationals.
Hmm.
And I mean, I knew I had some big jumps in me, just from like the practices we've been having because it's pretty funny because like we would actually have decent weather at practice and then we go to the meets and the weather would just be awful. So
Right.
um, I knew that like I could really if I put it together like I could really get a big mark out there. And so nationals, yeah, I jumped 220 and that was how I qualified for the trials. But this is the kicker. I actually did not go to the trials. I just I don't know. I just kind of didn't really want to go through the hassle. This year I'd already promised this year was my last year of high jump. Um, and I will be using my fifth year. I only have an indoor,
Hmm.
so I'm running, just running only, running sprints, and yeah, that's kind of how that went. But all the people that went to the trials, it was cool to see, cool to watch them. Like, I've jumped against a lot of those guys.
Hmm.
Like obviously Miller Slagle, and a bunch of the Kansas guys. So
Right. Yeah, it was quite a group. I was talking with everybody too. I botched a podcast with two of the guys from Grand Valley State, Eli
yeah,
and JJ. And they have another teammate. They have three guys at that school, which is a D2 school that qualified for the trials, right? And all of them over like 7.3, I think. So that was pretty amazing. And the young talent, I noticed, like you said, Michael there, who has also been a podcast guest here on the show. So
yeah.
yeah, a lot of young talent. And it sounds a little bit like you're disenchanted with the high jump. Are you getting tired of being hurt, or what's going on with that?
Um, I mean, I guess a little bit, sure, but I think I don't know. I think I just want a new challenge. Like high jump is great. I love high jump. It's still my favorite event, but I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like it's just not enough for me. Um, and it's just become kind of stale, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I'm just looking to do something different. Like, I mean, I think my biggest problem is like I just enjoy the sport overall. So like, I mean, even in practice, like in between jumps, I'm like running over, like messing around with the hurdles, like trying to throw shot put,
Yeah.
I can do it all. But I mean, I know I won't be able to do a decathlon or a hip or anything. But I don't know. I just feel like I'm just more than a high jumper.
Right. Are you interested in coaching once you're done with your career?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'll be doing. So.
Yeah. So what are you studying there at Midland? What are you going to get your degree in?
Well, technically, I just got my degree in digital marketing with a minor in sports management. And my next fifth year, I'll be taking, well, it's like kind of like a double minor in a way. So it'll be coaching and I'll be like finishing like sports management.
Hmm. Cool.
So that'll be that.
Those are way more marketable skills. I think I always joke with people. I said, well, I went to UCLA, I did kinesiology, and I thought for me, I was doing it because I wanted to apply it to high jumping, so I wanted to learn about the
Yeah,
human body, how to train, all this stuff. And a lot of that I got out of it for sure. Um, and but at that time in the early 80s, most people would be like, you say, oh, I'm a kinesiology major. They're like, oh, you can be a trainer, meaning like training room. And I'm like, I don't see myself as taping ankles and all that. Nothing against it. I cherish and value those guys because and I know, you go hobbling into the training room and you're like, please help me. It's like coming into the pits at Daytona, you're like, something's broken. Can you fix me and get me back out on the track? So, but I didn't have any desire in doing that. And, you know, everything's quite evolved quite a bit in, the world of kinesiology from, like you said, there's digital sports marketing. There's, all these new fangled computers and, you've got AI now booming. You've got,
yeah,
you said marketing and Instagram and this and that. And there's all these different ways, to make money and to, the interactions are pretty amazing. So yeah, there's times I'm like, man, I think I was born into the wrong era, but
yeah,
it's wild that you have all those opportunities in front of you with your degree. I remember thinking mine wasn't necessarily limited. I ended up getting a master's too in exercise science, but I'm still kind of locked into that training world, of
mhm,
training, coaching, and again, that's not a bad thing. Um, but I don't really see a lot of wiggle room for me. um, So hey, you're gonna coach now. Does that start as early as next season? Like as soon as you're done with your indoor, are you gonna slipping into the coaching mode, or are you gonna take a little time?
Um, well, technically, I'll still be a student, just because like the indoor season runs into that second semester.
Right.
So, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think I gotta say for you, Shannon, I'm excited because it's a it's an interesting life. I look back at what I'm doing now. I'm still coaching and I just turned 60. So and when I first started doing it, I did not think that I was going to be doing it. So I'd finished my career at UCLA. I was still at school. I hadn't graduated off the campus yet. I did my 4 years. And then, that next year I was just kind of wandering around because I didn't have a purpose. We don't have indoors out here. We do, but we really didn't back then. We didn't do indoors at all at UCLA. And when you think about it, there's really no reason for indoors because, we don't need to go indoors. Except this last year, you were mentioning your weather. My gosh, we had the weirdest spring here in California that I can remember in 20 years because we had the same thing happen. We'd be training during the week and it'd be nice, sun would be out, sometimes not super warm and anything, but, dry. And
Yeah,
there might have been a couple days that it rained, but for the most part, you could practice during the week. And I wouldn't, as usual, I don't look at the weather forecast here in Southern California because it's kind of like the song, it never rains in Southern California. You're just like going along. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, there's going to be a meet this weekend. And the meet day would show up and the clouds would show up and it would pour and it was cold. And I mean, we had 4, 5, 6 different weekends like that where I was just going, I don't want to go to that meet. I mean, I'd rather stay home. It's nice and warm and dry in here. I don't want to go sit and freeze and, have the kids soaking wet, running around, blah, blah, blah. And of course we're powering through it, but it was like, I remember those conditions. You brought up the 40-degree weather. And again, it's a little bit rarer here on the coast, but my freshman year, this is one of my favorite stories. I'm jumping with Dell Davis, who had jumped 7.7 1/4 the previous spring. This is 1982, right? So in 82, as a junior at UCLA, Dell jumped 7.7 1/4 at Provo, Utah, who became the #1 jumper in UCLA history. And then his teammate was Lee Balkin. Lee jumped 7.3 in high school and was still jumping 7.3 or 7.4 pretty consistently. So they had those two guys. And then I was like #7 on the depth chart, but I had managed somehow to work my way up to #3, and they took me to the Oregon meet. And going up to Oregon is an experience, like and
yeah.
you go up to track town, and the people up there just, I think it's because there's Nike money running through there, but this is the early '80s, so it wasn't like it is now. The stadium wasn't like it is now. That place is just dialed in, right? It's beautiful. It was this old rickety green wooden stands, but anyway, they fly us up there on Friday, which is also rare out here. Usually people fly us in that day. You go down to the meet, you compete, you get back on the plane, you go home. It's like boom, boom. But for some reason, there's never a flight out on Saturday for us. So they would fly us in Friday. We would compete on Saturday and actually stay the night Saturday night, and they'd fly us out Sunday morning. And
Mhm.
so you kind of get treated like royalty there, right? We go in, we check out the thing, we go check out the track, and then you kind of wander around. You can see the campus. I don't know. Did you make it? Did you ever hear about Tracktown Pizza when you were there? Did you go to Tracktown Pizza?
I did not know.
Great place downtown. They have all kinds of faces on the walls of great Oregon athletes, football, track, basketball, And anyway, we go down there and place looks nice enough. And the day that before was nice weather. Man, we got up on Saturday morning. You're reading the paper, first of all, there in Eugene, and they dope out the meet. They say UCLA's in town. It's a pretty small college town, really. And the people are just rabid Oregon Duck fans, obviously. And we're in town. We're the UCLA Bruins. We had a 2-year winning streak and dual meets going on at that time. And all this other stuff was going on. And they dope out the meet, right? They're like, okay, so here's what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And they go, UCLA should probably win by a couple points. Like they're egging people to come come watch. And we get out there, Shannon, and it's cold. I mean, they told me to bring tights, so I brought tights. And I'm a
Yeah.
Southern California kid. It's always 85 degrees and sunny. So I've got these tights on, and I get out there, and it is butt freezing cold. And they're doing the intros finally for the high jump, and it's raining, it's cold, it's in the 40s maybe, low 40s like you're talking about. And then all of a sudden, the guy's doing the announcements, and he goes, "So we have UCLA, Del Davis, blah blah blah," and then he stops, and the crowd just goes quiet. There's like a little, and we're looking up, and you see little flakes coming down, and the guy just goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, is that snow?" And I'm looking out, and I'm like, "Is that snow?" I'm like, "I've never seen it snow at a track meet before." And he goes, "First call for the men's giant slalom," and everybody starts cracking up, right? I mean, if it's snowing at my meet at Oregon. So yeah, needless to say, I think we ended up, I don't know, Dell might have taken third. I think they beat us in the high jump, ridiculously. I don't even know if I jumped 2 meters. I was so busy freezing. So they
Yeah.
did that to us 2 years in a row. We went up 83 and 84. And in 84 was an Olympic year. And they had Joaquim Cruz from Brazil running the 400 and ran the 4 and the 8. So he kicked our butts in the 400, the 800, and the 4x4 relay. And they beat us again. So, and then my junior, we went back up there, and the weather changed. And, we went 85 degrees and sun out, and we beat them like 100 to 62. And I don't think they've invited us back since then. But those first 2 years were just, oh my God, a snow at a track meet. I was like, this can't
That's
be happening.
crazy.
Mm. So this spring wasn't that bad, but it was it was the weather was a travesty. But getting
Yeah.
back to what you were talking about, starting your career, I started helping the decathletes a little bit. There's a couple of decathlete high jumpers that would be around, and I'd be around. And so I was not really a volunteer coach or anything. I was just working a little bit. And then I went into, training mode. In 88, I was out of the school. I hadn't graduated yet, but I was training for the trials. And then I finally came back, finished my degree, and was sitting around at home without a purpose. And my mom was like, "You need a job. You need to go and ask the local junior colleges and see if they need a coach." And when I told them UCLA and blah blah blah, I go, "Yeah, we need a jump coach," and that was it. But it all started pretty innocently, and it was a $2,500 stipend, for the year, which
Yeah.
is not the going rate still, not the highest paying job in the world. So I think back on it, and I didn't tough it out. So my encouragement is, first of all, to try to tough it out and to figure out a way to make it work. I know there's a lot of good young coaches here in the States, and the only problem with track and field is, money. How do you
Yeah.
get paid any real money at it? Because unfortunately, it's not football, it's not basketball, it's not any of these other sports that have a much higher profile than we do. So, but if you can find a way to make it work, and continue to grow in your coaching, there are levels to be attained. Have you thought about any of the certifications or anything that you need to do, like maybe becoming, USATF certified and those kinds of things as you start that career?
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure I still have like the tab open. I've been looking at it. I plan on doing that pretty soon here. Maybe even before like the end of the summer.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
looking through.
interesting. If you do the USATF one, they actually had, I did it 2 years ago. I was training Ezra Fretch, who's a Paralympic athlete, and they
Uh,
wanted me to get USATF certified, so I did it. And because they have a stipend they can send you from the Olympic Committee, I guess, throughout the month. So I'm doing that, and they had it. It was like over a 3 or 4 day stretch, and it's literally 8 hours straight of virtual. And I'm like, I'm working. I'm a school teacher, and I'm
yeah.
teaching, and I've got a meet on Saturday. So I'm like, can I like follow along on my phone? And they're like, yeah, as long as you don't break the connection and everything. So I'm like listening to them talk, and they're going through every event, every kind of thing that you can do, training and this and that, and flexibility and technique for everything, shot, discus, javelin, high jump, long jump, And so I'm trying to pay attention because there's going to be a test later. And so I think I had my phone on. I don't know how I could keep it powered. I had to keep trying to keep it powered, on, recording, so I could go back through everything. And
Yeah.
while I was either at work or at practice or at this meet, it was really, really different. If you do the level 2 one, then you have to fly somewhere and stay at like kind of like a convention and go to
Mhm.
different workshops and blah, blah, blah. So I haven't done the level 2 yet. I got to find out. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of a statute of limitations on the level 1. I had heard if you get the level 2 that it's good forever. But the level
Yeah.
1, if all you do is a level 1, I think I might have to repeat it. So I got to find out how to do that differently. So, uh, what else is going on with you, man? What are you excited about? You're gonna start coaching. You're doing all these different events. You're getting set to graduate. What else is happening with Shandon?
Um, I mean, I think something I'm excited about is this next season. Like, I mean, I've always kind of like sprinted just a little bit, like a couple 4x4s here and there. Um, and like, I don't know, I just want to explore that a lot more because like I feel like there's some untapped potential there. So I'm excited about that.
What's your best 400 time?
My best right now is technically a 50.5, but I mean, I can run a lot faster than that. It's just I haven't.
Right.
So
Yeah, I tell you what, the 400 to me and the 400 hurdles are what I call the man's race. It's like you don't just go do the 400, and anybody who knows anything about it will tell you, right? When you watch those guys train and the things that they go through, I've seen everybody's seen guys, retching and throwing up after workouts. They run so
mhm.
hard, so difficult. I remember my coach one time made me run a 400 once in the fall. And I was just like, I did not like running that much. I tell anybody, I go, I'll jog and I'll do some light drills and some short sprints. Now I don't mind running if I'm playing basketball or football or tennis, anything that involves running around. I don't mind doing that. But I don't like when it's just like, oh, now we're gonna just run to run. It's like, you know, for
Yeah,
I know I'm dealing with a good high jump prospect when I gotta force them to run because for the high jump you only run 40 or 50 feet, sometimes
yeah,
depending on the guy. If you're Bondarenko or who's it, Brandon Stark, that 14 stride
yeah.
approach he had, those guys are way back there. But most of these guys are doing that short little jog up into a 7 or 8 step, right? Not very far. And it depends. Some guys are moving pretty fast, but I never had any speed. So all right, so you're gonna run the 400. Any other short sprints or just the 4?
I mean, I think the four will probably be like the primary thing. I mean, I'll probably just by default have to run the 600 maybe once or twice,
Yeah,
uh, a few 200s here and there. Probably not so much the 60. More than likely more 4x4s.
yeah.
So
You're
that'll
pretty
be
tall too, right? So difficult getting out of the blocks. How tall are you?
roughly 6'4".
Yeah, six
Yeah.
four. And how much do you weigh? You're not carrying a lot of weight on that frame.
Um, 137.
6'4", 137. I was telling everybody in the send up on you, Shannon. I go, this guy's got the perfect high jump body. Like, 6'4" is one thing. That's taller than me. So I'm 6'3" and a half. I was 180 in high school and I was pretty thin. My mom, typical mom's like, I don't want you to play football. You're gonna die. I'm just
Yeah.
like, Mom, I've been playing football for a while now. I'm not gonna die. And then when I left high school, I got to UCLA and I immediately, I think when I breathed in the air, I put on 15 pounds. Like I just got heavier. Like sometimes you just step into an older body, whatever
Yeah.
it was, the dorm food, it wasn't that I was hitting the weight room that hard. My freshman year, I really didn't. But that 15 pounds, man, it made a difference. I was so much, I wasn't fast to begin with. I think I was slower and I couldn't get off the ground. I had a terrible freshman year making that adjustment, and then you're 6'4", 135. You have the perfect light frame, everything else. So, well, getting out of the blocks quick should be okay still. But yeah, the sprinting indoors is a different animal, right?
Yeah.
That 60 you're talking about, the first time I saw that, I've only been to a couple indoor meets myself. I've seen them, but I've only been to a couple. And, there's just no room. People don't realize unless you have the money to build a huge indoor stadium, which is easier than it actually sounds easier than it is.
Yeah.
Everything's just in this tiny, cramped little space. So, you don't run. The 400 isn't a one lap thing.
All right.
You got everything's on wood. You got these high bank things. The high jump, the two places that I jumped here in Southern California for indoors for these meets, were terrible for the high jump. It's just you're running on wood in your spikes and it feels slow. You don't feel like you can run a curve safely and jump without slipping or sliding or whatever. Everything's cramped. Like in high school, my approach was 20 feet wide by 60, which is wide by all standards. I got laughed at by Dell and Lee for a good 6 months while they were forcing me to get a tighter curve. But
Yeah.
when I was in high school, I took that approach to the Sunkissed indoor meet, and there was no room for it at all. They had the standard here, and they had like 15 feet, maybe. I think it was more like 12, and then there was a drop off to concrete. So it was like, okay, you can't run off the wood or you're gonna die. So you got to run in here, real tight. And I know how I did. I hated every bit of indoors here in Southern California. Now I know there are other tracks that are better set up, and you can still have a nice surface indoors. Um, One of the things I keep wanting to bounce these off the athletes because you guys are the ones that are important. I want to set up after seeing athletes like yourself, on Instagram, send me their feed, right, and going through and seeing people jump indoors in basketball shoes sometimes on basketball
Yeah.
courts, right, jumping over bars, and I'm like, that looks like fun. To me, I'm going, now running and jumping indoors on a basketball court, I can do that. I've dunked, I've done all that. I know I can jump indoors. Certain floors that I've been on at UCLA at Poly Pavilion, we were playing what do you call it, intramural game one time. And somebody gave me a breakaway and I went up and dunked. And I mean, I literally felt like there was an extra 6 inches in that floor. Like you could tell I hit it and I was like, whoa, like automatic reaction was like, whoa, I'm still going up. So I was like, yeah, it'd be fun, to have a meet, just say, hey, no spikes. You don't need spikes, just tennis shoes with good grips, and set out the mats and let's go for it. So I'm looking for a venue to do that, both, either a high school level, but if it would be something that would grow, I got to find the right place. I think if I got a great place that I could sell to the athletes, maybe we could do that. But hey, while we got you here, I did download your 2 jumps that you sent me. So let's show everybody the famous Shandon Reitzell in action. So I'm gonna share screen with you real quick. And let's see. Patients can now see my screen. Here we go. And boom. Tell me which one and where we're at. Do you want this one or do you want the other one first? You got this one.
It's up to you.
Okay, so I see NAIA outdoors here on this one. Let's go the other one first. Say if that one was your 7-2. All right, so I'm not sure where we are, what we are. Are these the same meet, different angles? So tell us about this one.
So this was nationals this past May.
Uh-huh.
This jump was 220, I think.
So this is the big dog. Okay.
Yeah, and then the other one was 217, I'm pretty sure.
So you're right at the standard here. Are you kind of level with the standard? Are you slightly behind it? Hard to tell.
I'm like slightly behind it. So like one thing that I've been like working on is like trying not to shorten like my penultimate so much
Uh-huh.
because it's just like for some reason it's just become like a weird habit that I've had for really like the last 2 years. And so it'll make me like just kind of have to reach to get over the bar instead of just going up and over.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I bashed my head on the standard like earlier in the season, in practice, and like literally like cracked my head open.
Yeah.
Rough, but
Yeah.
yeah, clearly it's been a danger. But like I don't know, I've kind of learned to just adjust to it, and like I don't know, my spatial like awareness just got better from it.
Yeah. Well, it's a quick learning curve, right? You don't want to keep hitting your head on the standard, so
Yeah.
you figure that out pretty fast. I do notice, Barshim takes off from behind the standard too, but he's way out also,
Yeah.
like, 5, 6 feet away too. So the angle has a lot to do with that too. If you're coming flatter, and I think you're too close to the standard and a little bit behind it. You're preaching to the choir here. I've told this story before, but first meet my freshman year at UCLA, I opened at 2 meters, which I'd never jumped. I jumped 210 in high school, but I'd never opened that high. So I
Mhm.
opened at 2 meters and I jumped right over the standard. I was taking off from the same spot you were. I didn't know I was that close because I didn't usually jump from there, but I was so excited. I was out of my brain. Like I couldn't even focus. Had so much juice and electricity running through me. I was so excited to compete. I was a walk on at UCLA. They didn't give me a ride, and I'm just like ready to go. And I basically jumped over the standard and didn't touch anything. So I didn't realize I was too close. So the bar went up to 205 and I smacked my head on that standard and, did this, what you're talking about, cracked my head open, had blood, I'm laying there in the pit, kind of stunned, going, what happened? I took my other two jumps, I think, but I didn't make it. And then that was that fast learning curve. So, all right, here you come. And I'm hoping we caught you right from the start. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4-step straight, 5-step curve. Does that sound about right for you?
Yep.
Okay. So you jog in at the start, and you are a classic American power jumper, both a quick gather, both arms back. I like this. I can see both arms behind you at the takeoff and a really good lean back angle, right? So this angle here is the only thing I like of this angle is to see the lean back. I can't see that shot right at the bar as you're converting up, but you can see a little bit of it here. And you can see here, Shannon is straight up and down from takeoff leg up through your upper body frame, hands up overhead, right? And you're one of the quickest I've seen at getting your hands up and then right back down to your hips into that layout position. And so right here, you can see at the peak of your arch, your head and your feet are almost on the same level, which is my quote unquote ideal, is to have the head and the feet on exactly the same level with the high arch. And then as soon
Yeah.
as your head gets lower than your feet, your rotation is taken care of for you. Like I keep thinking if I could train someone to not even try to pull their feet over, because when you pull your feet, you tend to drop your butt, right? So it's like
Yep.
if you could stay in that position, I want to get those trapeze ropes that they train the acrobats with, where they can hold you up if you're out of position, right? You got a guy on either
Cool.
side with those rings around your hips, just let you spin and go, okay, just hold that position. Just wait, and because I don't know if you've seen it. You ever get a chance, watch the YouTube feed of the 2016 Olympics, the high
Mhm.
jump final, because they only show three guys. They
Yeah.
introduced the whole field. I think you might have to just find another one, but the one that always comes up first, and I think it's just because it basically boiled down to those three. It was Derek Druin from Canada, Barshim, and Bondarenko. And that
Yeah.
was pretty much the way it played out. And they were jumping out of this world, like unbelievably great. Druin didn't miss until he'd won the gold. And I think Barshim missed once. And Barshim had even been hurt that year. And then, Bondarenko is just a wild card, but he wasn't even jumping with them. He looked like he was on another planet. He came in at 7.4, then he passed, then he jumped 7.6, missed a couple times, made it. He still ends up jumping at the same heights as them when the money's on the line. But what was my point out of all that? Oh, the rotation. The rotation that Derek Druin was getting in that meet was ridiculous. And Barshim's always good, but they would literally almost rotate around and land on their stomachs, hands and feet.
Yeah.
You see the head hitting, but only the head and neck. The rest of them flying around, so fast that they're landing with their hands and their feet down, like they're catching themselves. I'm just like, oh my God, I've never seen anybody rotate like that. So here you are getting good rotation, and I see the flashing. Oh, that was your clock, right?
Yeah,
So you went after 5 seconds. You didn't waste any of your clock. You're like,
it was. I mean, we were just going because at this point in the competition, it was only uh just Michael and I. So
all right, well, that's an old thing too, right? You guys have been going against each other for years.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he's a good young man too, just like yourself. I haven't talked to him for a couple weeks. Got to meet both of you at that first NAIA final, which was great.
yeah,
So, all right, here we are, NAIA finals, and that's the 220 jump.
yep,
Awesome, awesome, and lots of room. Again, look at those knees up over. It looks like 7'3.5" height at least. So, all right, and then we've got this other jump. Let's show that one. Uh, there we go. And Shannon was gracious enough to send us these. All right. So we got a little bit of a change of angle. Oh, two changes. So we get to see the start. So this is like some kind of a broadcast, right?
yeah,
Cool. This is what we need more of. I'm excited. Anytime I see anything like this, I'm like, let's get these guys on TV because the drama is amazing. The coverage always sucks, because I always bounce back and forth, right? You never see like the YouTube version is cool. Like
yeah,
even the 2021 games, they show every jump. If you're watching that, now the two guys that are doing the commentary, I've been breaking this down recently because I want to start doing some work, utilizing the great videos of the great athletes. But these guys are talking about the high jump. Like these guys don't know a thing of what they're talking about.
yeah.
Uh,
It's so hard to watch.
it is, but they did at least show every jump, which was amazing. I watched the guy from Japan was the first one out. I saw a couple guys that I thought, oh, these guys they're kind of you could see the ones that were nervous, but then they started to loosen up and get better. But it's like, it's still usually it's kind of a crap show because on the big feeds, CBS or let's say, sorry, NBC or Peacock or whatever, they show you one jump and then they go right back to their races. It's like the races rule the world, right? The 100, the 200, the 400. Every heat, I watch the trials and I'm watching every heat of the men's 400 or the 800 or, whatever it was. And then they go, oh, yeah. And here's that one chick that throws the disc and I'm apologize. I don't know her name off the top of my head, but she's awesome. She's won the gold,
Yeah,
and they show her and they show her throw, and that's it. So not only are they not showing the jumps or anything else, but they're showing only one discus thrower, and she happens to be the best in the world, and she's from the US, but that's how their brains work. They're like, we don't really care about anything else. We just want to show you that one because she's really good and she's trying to throw over 70 meters, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like watching it going, God, they still do the same things. It's been 40 years. When
yeah,
they first started showing our meets back on Prime Ticket, which I think it may have evolved into something else out here, but it's just like that. So anyway, wow, dude, this is like you blurring by here. High speed camera. This is in slow motion. I can see why you want to run the 400. You look like a ghost image here. And this is like stop motion and you're in a blur. So
yeah.
very good.
I'm a little faster than I look.
I'm telling you, that's pretty amazing. It's not usually when you slow it down, you can see an image. This looks like a ghost image. Like you're in another dimension. All right. I love this. From what I can see of this, I see a tremendous lean back angle. That looks like it's approaching 45 degrees, which is pretty amazing. And that knee drive up and across, that high arch, nice. This was 217, you said?
Yep.
Okay. And where was this meet? This is the NAIA final. Where were you guys?
We were in Indiana.
Okay. Indiana. Awesome. Like Indiana, or this is another small college in Indiana, right?
Um, Indiana Westland.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. I've heard
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. And you got plenty of room for your run up, it looks like. They have a big apron there.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that was also like the javelin runway,
Yeah.
but obviously we weren't jumping while they were throwing.
Yeah,
So
and
it
you're
was.
and you're also not out on the track. So that's that's always kind of a pain in the butt, right? You got to check first before you go to make sure nobody's running through your lane. All right. Yeah, outrageous. Well, I tell you what, if you do get the itch back, you got to let me know if I can ever get you out here on the West Coast. I would train you for free, and I think we could get you over 7.5 or 7.6 because you have every bit of talent that you need. So it's hard. I know high jumpers are loyal to their coaches, so I'm always shamelessly pimping for myself because my ego as a coach is actually bigger than it was when I was a jumper because I don't think I was that fantastic as a jumper. But oh, biomechanics background and all that, and also a little bit of the back reverse pullover. So a little bit of the Dontavius Hill finish, right? You guys have that as your head's going back, it kind of goes a little bit to the left, I'm guessing, and so you kind of get that reverse high spin over there. And I used to coach this. It's funny that we're going over this, but I've in the last 5 years, Shannon, I've come up with things I've told the high school kids for a long time. I go, hey, don't throw your head back to the left. You're going to do this weird reverse double corkscrew, And I said it's one more added rotation I don't think we need to deal with. And it was usually a problem because they A weren't jumping that high, and B, they were doing it. The timing was wrong. So I
Yeah.
never really had a good view of that particular thing working. But it's one of the many things that I've said over the last 5 years that I've had to eat my own words later. So I'm watching Dontavius. I watched you now. I've watched a couple other athletes, and one of the most famous ones is Stefan Holm from Sweden. If you watch Stefan Holm's jumps, he does the same thing. He literally, and he's one of the best technicians I've ever seen. His knee drive
Yeah.
cross is outrageous. He's a single armor he kind of jumps almost like a power jumper as a single armor, which is rare, and especially with high speed. But the knee comes across as good as anybody. He leaves it alone, rides it up and over, right? But at the very top, he does that head back to the inside and flips that little sideways half flip over like you're doing. And I remember watching that just going, you know what? You should really research before you speak. So I've also eaten my words on foot scraping. I don't know. I saw in your other jump, I thought it doesn't look like you're a foot scraper here because you're moving too fast, but you're pretty close. Do you ever?
I used to do it a lot. Um, and it's weird because some of my best jumps would come from it. I think it works when you do it on accident, but like if you try and get that low heel
Yeah.
um knee drive, then it becomes bad. But when I used to do it on accident, I mean, oof.
Yeah. See, and I was trained by a little Romanian coach, Baru Elias, out here at Long Beach City College in Southern California. And he coached a guy named Brian Stanton, who went to the Olympics in '88, right? Seoul, Korea. And he jumped 7.8, and what I trained with him. And, I was Elias's number two, but I was nowhere near Brian Stanton. I never touched Brian in a meet ever. I think I was in this, not even close. So I think the best I ever did was 2 inches lower. Most of the time I had meets of him jumping at the UCLA Pepsi meet, jump 7.6 on video, just beautiful high cycling, tall, 6'5", a little taller than you. He looked
Yeah.
heavier because he had huge quads and huge calves, but he still was only like a buck 70, for some reason, just tall. You hate looking at the guy. He had wide shoulders, tiny hips, huge quads. His legs were amazing. I mean, like you're just like these guys' legs are just killer. And then when he ran with the most ungodly perfect high cycling, knees up, feet to the butt every stride, and come off the ground. So his feet would never come close to scraping. And so I just got indoctrinated into you cycle. Like if Elias taught me anything, sprinting, hurdling, long triple high, pole vault, whatever, cycle. You cycle your feet. So I was like, and I used to watch guys in high school that would scrape their feet and have holes in their toes, right? On that
Yeah.
takeoff foot. And I'm like, dude, you're destroying your shoes. And I think you're slowing down, lowering down, and scraping that foot. I'm like, stay up tall and run off the ground. And so I was like, I don't think anybody's ever going to jump like more than 7.2 or 7.4 doing that, right? Well, that year I go to Mount Sac, right? You've heard of the Mount Sac relays out here, beautiful new
Yeah.
stadium. They're trying to get trials to go there in 2028, but because it's got Nike money. So I'm watching this guy from Texas Tech. And I forget, I should really look up his name because I know he's a pretty accomplished jumper. And then Seals, I think, from SC. And the kid from Texas Tech jumped 7.5 and a half, and he had one of the biggest foot scrapes I've ever seen. So right away, I'm like, oh, well, there's me eating my words again. You know, there's a foot scraper that just jumped 7.5. And then I had somebody send me a text or a note on Instagram say, hey, Charles Austin scraped his foot when he jumped 7.10. And I'm like, and then I believe Sotomayor scraped his foot at 8 feet. So, now that I'm had a chance to look and and under further review, I'm an idiot, so I just need to keep my mouth shut. Fabian Delrid from Sweden, another one, 6'9". You want to talk about guys taller than you? 6'9". He's jumped 7.7 3/4. I forget whatever that is, 233 or something. And big foot scrape. You can see it on the video. You just see the dust trail, and it's like, yep, 7.7 3/4, no problem. I'm like, well, that's out. So, all right. So then they're showing you jump here with the wrong name, but that's typical.
Oh well, no, that's because he jumped before me,
Yeah.
and I guess they just kept it there. But
Yeah.
I think they changed it like 3 seconds later.
All right. Well, that's good to know. We want to have you getting full credit. So with this jump, then, this was just along the way to the other one. So you jumped 217 here, then you went to 220, and you made that. And did Michael make that also? How did that competition turn out between the two of you?
Yeah. So it was. Let me think. So after 214, he cleared first attempt. I cleared second attempt, and after that it was just us two. So then I cleared 217 first attempt, and then 220 first attempt, and then he took 3 attempts on 220, and then neither one of us cleared 223, and then I won off of misses.
Yeah, you beat him on misses at 220. Awesome. But that qualified you both for the trials.
Yep.
Oh,
He
that's it.
I think he had already qualified earlier. Yeah, he
Patty?
had already qualified earlier in the season.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Another good young jumper. You guys, a lot of
For sure.
talent out here. This is, the NAIA is not the big schools, as many people may or may not know, but at the upper ends, when you do get to these big meets, there are plenty of
Yeah.
great young athletes like yourself. And that's a super high level competition. I remember one of the first years I was coaching at Orange Coast College out here. It's a junior college in Southern California. The state meet that year, state finals, there were three kids that jumped, 220 or 219 or something like 7.2,
Yeah.
uh, 218, I guess. Three kids, top three places went 7.2 or better. And that was just a junior college meet, so it
Yeah.
depends, where you're at and what's going on, but the level can be outstanding. Well,
Mhm.
hey, Shannon, dude, appreciate you taking the time. First of all, I'm excited about you and your future, what you're going to be doing. I hope you're recharged, refreshed. You've got your last season, coming up, your last indoor hurrah, right? And then
Mhm.
off to hopefully coaching and continue to compete. Do you think you can do both? Do you think you want to do both, or are you just going to switch over to coaching?
Probably just switch over to coaching. I
Yeah.
mean, but you never know. I mean, maybe I feel motivated enough to put the spikes back on and
All right.
up
Well, if that
again.
ever happens, look me up. All right. If there's any way to do it, get you
Yeah.
get you out here because hopefully the weather this last spring I would have been making empty promises, but usually the weather's outstanding, and you have some great facilities out here. But I would love to work with you and see. I think your potential is just off the charts. But hey, best of luck this next indoor. Hope let those shins heal up before you start training real hard. And then, but you know how to do that, I'm sure, just as well as I do. And continued success, and can't wait to see what happens next with young Shandon Reitzell.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Always good talking with you. We'll have to do another one when you transition into your coaching career. Start talking about all the great things that are going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks again, Shannon.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, buddy. All right. We're gonna stop share. Where we go? Let's go here. I get this. How do I do this? All right. I am still here. We're still talking. Should I mute? No. QuickTime player I don't need. Oh, there we go. Stop share. Okay. We are still recording. All right. And so that will finish it up here with young Shandon Reitzell. He's a young high jumper from which college? He told me and I forgot. He's an NAIA jumper. Him and Michael Millslegel that we have had on here before battled it out again. I think they were doing the same thing 3 years ago, my first year at Vanguard. So they battled it out, and Shannon won this time, and they ended up both qualifying for the trials, where Shannon did not compete and Michael did. And he is now getting ready for his last indoor season at that particular school, and then said he's going to transition into coaching. So excited to hear about that. Always need good young athletes becoming coaches here in the U.S. Not enough. There's not enough of them. So until next time, we're going to very quickly get a couple more high jumper types in here. Hopefully trials athletes again that have both competed at and eventually hope to get some that made it through. But we're also going to do a little breakdown of who's in and who's out as we go into the Olympics. I'd like to see that Olympic field. And I'm not sure, where we are in the order. I know the U.S. gets theirs done and everybody's got 2 or 3 weeks to train here, but the Olympics come up at the end of July. So we're getting there pretty quickly. And I really need to check in with some others. I need to check in with Fabian Delrid to see how he's doing in Sweden, because he was one of the number one guys there. Like to see what TJ Shankar did for India, because TJ jumped here in the States, and then he's the number one jumper in India. So it'd be great to see him there. And of course, a big fan of Fabian's because he's done some great work, shared his videos with us, very open young man, not a gatekeeper at all, works like a beast in the weight room. So I'm a big fan of his, would like to see him jump well and on the world stage. So we've got those to look forward to coming up here on Raise the Bar with Troy Haines. Please give us a follow if you're listening on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe, and we'll keep the content coming your way. We branch out every once in a while out of the world of track and field, but lots of times we just talk with the athletes and coaches and trainers and anybody that can help us to get better and raise that bar. So until next time, Troy Haines signing off. Another episode of Raise the Bar. We just talked with Shandon Reitzell, and we're looking forward to other great athletes here in the future. All right. So long.